Hi, this is Ben, and this is another edition of React Hacks, and today I want to show you how I'm going to add one of these items here to my cart. So it starts by logging in, which I've already done, and if you look at the cart, it's currently empty and it has the name of the user. You go to the show page of this item and you click the Add to Cart button, and then you see it here. And of course, if you want to remove the item, you hit the Remove Item button, and it disappears. So how this is happening involves two steps. The first step happens on the front end, the second on the back end. And what's happening on the front end is on this show page, I'm making a fetch request to my Backend API, taking the ID from this item and the ID from the user, and then the backend creates the cart item. For the cart, I'm making a different fetch request, this time to an endpoint called auto login, and that's going to return information about the user, and within that information is going to be the cart items and then the item printed here onto the screen. The second part of the answer involves the backend, and that sort of centers around the model of the cart item itself, because all the cart item is a reference to one of these items and a reference to the user ID. And then from there, I access I create the item that way. So let's take a look at the code and see if I can make that a little bit clearer for you. So we'll start on the front end. This is the show page, and this is where if you click on this button, we will invoke the add to cart function, and that is going to be a post request to this endpoint of cart items. And I'm making sure to send the JOT token of the user because this is a route that uses authentication. And then I'm sending the ID of the item and the ID of the user, and then the backend creates the cart item. In the cart component, this is where I'm making a GET request to this endpoint called auto login, and that only needs to receive the JOT token from the user so I can get information from the user, which I'm going to set in state. And then I'm going to access from that user the cart item, map over it, and then create a new cart item for each item in that user's cart. And to delete an item, I'm going to access this endpoint. I'm going to send a delete request, to this cart items endpoint using the ID of the cart item. So that covers the front ends, and the back end again sort of starts with what the cart item is, and this is its model. All it is a reference to the ID of the item and the ID of the user, which is on a few columns here. This is an array that carries those indexes, or indices maybe. And then this quantity, which I haven't finished building. There's a little bit more logic in order to actually update the quantity, and that's something I'll be sure to cover here in the future. For the controller of the cart item, when you make a post request, I'm going to create a new cart item, passing it the params, and those params are simply the ID of the item and the ID of the user, kind of like we saw in the model. And then for the auto login request, that is a GET request, and what that will do is locate the user based off of the JOT token, and I've told Ruby, or Ruby on Rails rather, to include the cart items, and then inside of that, the item associated with the cart item. So that takes you through the front end and the back end endpoints, and this cart has much more left to do, but this is a good start. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow.